I realized like in music, it's a forever battle for us. And I think that I have to just, we all have to just kind of keep our minds on the goal, which is just making the best art possible. And people are going to hear it when they hear it.
Hey, what's up,
How's it
Sam?
going?
Doing well, man. How are you?
Good. My computer was going crazy. I
Oh,
finally got it to work. Here we are.
well, I'm glad you're here. I'm super excited to chat with you.
Yeah, it's going to be awesome.
Well, I'm Adam, and this is a podcast about you and your journey in music, and we'll talk about your new album.
Okay, sick.
Awesome, awesome. So, first off, I know you're in Nashville now, correct?
Yeah.
Okay. Were you born and raised here?
Well, no, I was born in Grand Forks, North Dakota. My dad was in the Air Force, and so we were stationed all sorts of crazy places. So we were there, we were in Sacramento, we moved to Florida. I lived in Atlanta most of my high school days, and then came to Nashville for the last however many years, forever.
Oh, wow. Okay. I'm from San Diego, so I knew a lot of military families that would move around quite a
Uh,
bit. There's a lot of
it was
Navy.
crazy. It definitely helped me like learn how to like meet new people and be instant friends because that was the only choice I had.
Yeah, I bet that's rough, man. I mean, to move around that did you stay, you said it all of high school in Atlanta then?
Yeah, luckily
Okay.
during high school, there wasn't as much like moving around.
That's good. Because I would imagine that'd be even worse, right? You're like a junior or
For
senior
real, they're
then.
like, okay, your senior year, you're gonna start over. I'm like, no.
Right. Wow. Okay. So was that the majority, like the longest stint you had? Was that in Georgia?
Well, at this point, it's Nashville. I've been
Well,
here for
I guess
over
aside from
over
Nashville.
15 years. It's pretty crazy.
Wow, man. Well, I recently moved to Nashville or south of Nashville about a little over 2 years ago.
Awesome.
Yeah, absolutely love it here. Best decision my family and I ever made.
Same. I really can't imagine myself living anywhere else other than London, but we'll talk about that at some point.
Okay, right on. Well, having your dad in, is you said Air Force. Like, do you come from a musical family at all?
No, nobody really did music. My dad had a guitar and he would play every once in a while when I was little, but nobody really is ultra musical. On my mom's side of the family, we had one composer way back in the day, but that was really it.
Okay, but nobody. Yeah, that's interesting. But your dad played guitar. Did he show you anything?
Not really, no, but he would play a lot and he loved music. So I think because he loved music, kind of fell in love with music as well.
Okay. And when did you start playing? Like, were you in piano lessons at an early age, or did you do chorus choir or any of that?
Yeah, so I did kind of all of it. I did piano lessons, but I would refuse to read the music on the page. I would memorize it and play it back, and the teacher would get so frustrated because I would pretend like I'm reading. But my ear has always been the strongest thing that I have, which is really kind of more of a natural gifting. And so I did piano lessons and then got kicked out of that. And then I did some guitar lessons, but I was doing classical first, and I'm like, this is boring. Give me the electric guitar. Where's the amp? And so
Sure.
I eventually got my little Strat pack of like a little amp and my Squire Strat, and that was
Okay.
kind of the beginning of like really learning how to actually like play rock and playing Green Day's "Hitching a Ride" and Metallica and all these ridiculous guitar riffs.
That's awesome. Yeah, I remember the Stratocaster, that Squire pack. It was like the little combo amp. You got a bag, like a cord, maybe
Yeah.
a pack of strings or something.
It was everything you needed, and you could turn it up loud enough to be just a little bit obnoxious. So,
Sure. How old were you when you got that guitar?
man, I so like in eighth grade, I did like my first talent show with my like little acoustic thing, but it was after I think it was like after that talent show, so like late in eighth grade when I got like my first electric guitar, and I was like having dreams about it, like I wanted it that bad kind of thing, and I got it one year for Christmas, I think, and yeah, and it was love ever since.
It's amazing. What'd you do in the talent show?
Well, I wrote my first song and sang my first
Really?
song and played it. And I was kind of like super dorky. So like it was a moment where like I had no friends before the talent show. And then I won the talent show. And then everybody's like, Everybody's my friend. I'm like, what the heck? What?
Oh, that's rad. Well, so you wrote your own song and played it. Did you play it on piano or would you play it
Played it
on?
on like acoustic, just
Oh,
like
on
a
acoustic
guitar.
guitar. Okay,
Yeah,
so this is you could play guitar, but it was before you got the electric guitar.
yeah,
Okay. Wow. Do you remember the song?
yeah. It was, it was kind of a gospel tune,
Okay.
called Heaven's Blue Skies. Very deep, life and death kind of vibes. I really don't remember any
Damn.
of the lyrics, but I remember it being really bad. But somehow I still won. So
That's amazing. Usually it's like I remember going to talent I have a 15-year-old and a 7-year-old or almost 7 this month or next month, but
yeah.
it's like you go to those talent shows and it's like no one was doing original stuff. It was like covers or they'd put a song on and like dance around. It was never
Yeah.
anything like interesting.
I'm not really sure where I got the idea to like, oh, I'm gonna write my own song and play it. So
And then play it for
that
the whole
was
school.
yeah, and play it for the whole school. And I don't think I thought like, and if it sucks, everyone's gonna hate me even more.
Right. I always find that interesting that a lot of people's first shows are the talent show. It's like,
Yeah,
wouldn't I would think going in front of 13 strangers at a local coffee shop would be like a lot less like intimidating than putting yourself in front of all your peers that you're probably going to continue going to school with that are
yeah.
if you do awful, then you're going to be
They're like,
ridiculed for the rest
oh,
of your
you're the kid
life.
with that stupid song, you idiot.
Yeah. Nowadays it's like, see, they like filmed it, you know what
Yeah. You're
I
like in high school and they're like, remember that time in middle school where you did that really stupid song?
mean?
Like, I'm really thankful I didn't grow up during that period of time where people
Same
were
here.
filming everything, because there's some things that are lost in time that were just for the moment that I'm very happy about.
Yeah. Oh wow. Well, from that first song, did that kind of give you like an itch to continue? I'd imagine like getting that kind of like validation right away on your first song where you're like, oh wow, I should probably continue doing this.
I think for me, it was like a magnet piece. It was like, oh, wow, like this brings people to me, and like I have more friends and like girls will like me. And like, I was kind of at that moment, I was more like, it was more about like social norms and trying to fit in. And it was like, man, I could use music to make people understand me a little bit more. Cause I always felt like a bit of an outsider. So I think music, and still to this day, I think music is the thing that brings more people to me to help me kind of like fit in with people. So
Okay.
kind of crazy.
When you went to high school, then was that something? Because it sounds like you would have done that at a different school in a different part
Yeah.
of the country, and then you moved to Atlanta and you start high school. Were you known as kind of like the music kid? Like, is that how you kind of got in? Were you like, hey, I can play music and write songs? Like, where are
Yeah, I was
the
like, okay,
artsy
this
kids
worked
at?
in middle school. Let's carry it on to high school for sure. I mean, like I was kind of the obnoxious kid who made like neon posters, and every other month I had some show with my new band, and we were trying to be like, I don't know if you know who this band is, but Butch Walker had a band called Marvelous Three, and
Oh
it was kind of
yeah,
like a three-piece. So of course I started a three-piece band, and I'm like, here we are, like and the band name was awful. It was called Better Than Nothing, which I guess it was better than nothing, but still
that's not that
horrible.
bad of a name. That I could see that name still like on like an emo flyer from
Yeah, yeah. It was
2003.
definitely ultra emo. Yeah, like we were seeing kids. Like I think, the funny thing is like now people are like, get on TikTok, you're gonna get famous. And then before that, it was like, get on The Voice or American Idol, you're gonna be famous. But I feel like when I was a kid, it was like start a band and you guys are gonna get signed and blast off into the stratosphere. And so that's what I did. I just started a band first day of high school, basically, and tried to find the most talented people I could to wrangle into this band with me and basically force them to play with me for the next 4 years.
Oh, so was that band you said Better Than Nothing? Were you guys around that whole time through high school?
Yeah, yeah. So crazy enough, like our senior year of high school, we played some random like birthday party of some random friend of ours. But at that birthday party, there was a guy named Scott Michael, and which is a funny name, Scott, the two first names, but Scott Michael, who was under this guy named Jeff Blue, which is also a funny name. But Jeff Blue signed Lincoln Park, and they were at I think at the time they were at Interscope. And so
Uh-huh.
Scott Michael was there seeing my band play. and he walked up like almost like a movie, and he was like, "Hey man," he's like, "I want to talk to you guys. I'm an A&R for Interscope, and I'm sitting here I'm in a basement with a bunch of kids. We just played them all of our crappy songs and a few covers." And I'm like, what did he hear that like that he would like enough to do? So I'm freaking out. I'm like, "We're getting signed, Mom. We're gonna be famous," you know. And
Yeah.
we sit down with him, and the other two guys finally speak up, and we're like, "Well, no, we want to go to college." Like one of them's like, "Well, I want to do this," and the other one's like, "I want to do that." So I was like, "Guys, what are you doing? This is what we've been working for this whole time, you know, all these
Yeah.
shows and sneaking our way into festivals and whatever else." And so I tried to continue on my own, and it just kind of didn't happen. So I ended up going to college.
So real quick on the whole thing with this person, I've interviewed Jeff Blue. He's a great guy. He's still
I've
doing
never met
records.
him. I've never
Oh,
met
really?
Jeff. Yeah.
Yeah, I've only met him via the internet like this, but I think he did Macy Gray. Like he found a bunch of big artists
He's
after
signed a
the
lot of huge artists. Yeah, he
um yeah. So the person that was with him or knew him that talked to you guys, was it like the conversation, did it end after the fact that the other guys in your band were like, we're gonna go to school to do this? Like, I don't know if this is my thing. Like at that
like
point, did the
looking back,
conversation end?
it was a little bit weird looking back now, knowing a bit of like the industry and how things actually work. It was like they invited me to come to what was then Tree Sound Studios to work with this guy named Robert. And Robert had recorded like, you know, a bunch of Outcast stuff that had just won Grammys. So I'm thinking, I'm
Damn.
going in with this guy who just won a Grammy. But literally, I end up in this side room in Tree Sound, and they put the headphones on me, and I realize, oh my gosh, I don't know how to play with a click. Like I don't even know what a click is. And I hear it in my ear, and it's like doot, 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 doot. And I'm like sitting there trying to focus, like emoting, but at the same times trying to stay on tempo. It was just kind of a mess. And I think like probably from that experience, they were just like, "Oh my gosh, this guy is so green," you know. And I was a
Right.
kid, you know, a senior in high school, and never really had recorded in that way. We'd always done like, you know, a 2-track and not to click, you know, and all that kind of
Right.
stuff. So anyways, I think like and when the other guys left, it took a lot of wind out of my sails. So I'm sure I was a lot less enthusiastic. I'm sure I was a lot more nervous. Like I'm more of a band guy in general. So having other people with me probably gave me a lot of confidence and a lot of like swagger. But the moment they were gone, it was like, ah.
Yeah, I could imagine, like, yeah, going in if you hadn't played, because I'm not a musician by any means. I mean, I can poorly play guitar, but
Yeah,
like going in and trying to play to like like a click track and having
man.
like important people around while they're watching you do this, and this is your first time. Yeah, I would. That'd be a lot of pressure.
It was nerve wracking. And even too, like having to track the guitar first and kind of singing the song in my head while I'm tracking the guitar. That was something really alien for me at that time. And still, I hate doing that. I hate being the first one to put down any instrument. I rather 100% the producer put down whatever the first instrument is, even if we never keep it. I hate being the one to like have to memorize like how many, you know,
Oh yeah,
without
chord
a vocal,
progressions
like,
are here with
oh, it's
this
the
part. Yeah.
worst. It's my least favorite thing of all time. So, I mean, that was hard enough. But yeah, it was just a hard moment. It was definitely a learning moment. Like, wow, I still have some ways to go.
Mhm. Was that, do you feel like that kinda, solidified you wanting to go to college? Were you like, "Oh, like, I don't know if I can do this. I should probably go a different route at this point and just kinda keep this as a hobby?"
You know, I think at that time, like I had just such a chip on my shoulder, such an attitude and ego that like I looked at my mom and I was like, "Well, I know you want me to go to college, and I'll go to college, you know, but if I get signed, I'm leaving," kind of thing,
Oh,
you
okay.
know? And so, you know, which is so funny looking back. But that's pretty much what I did. I went to college, and then funny enough, like this other band I was with, we ended up signing our junior year. So we just ended up staying in college. We're like, man, we're this far into it. Like, let's just finish college and keep
Where
going.
did you go to college at? Or, like, were you in Atlanta still?
No, so I had a choice of either going to UGA or Belmont, and
Oh.
you know, in Nashville. And UGA was cool, but like it was a lot of like jam band and like kind of like more like acousticy different kind of vibe music at the time. And so I was like, man, this isn't my thing. And it just felt like another college town. It didn't feel like music to me for some reason. And so when I went to Belmont, though, I mean, you know, naively, I went down Music Row and I was like, look at all these studios, look at all these, look at all these record labels. Like, this is it. This is the place, you know? And then I really like Belmont, and I'm like thinking, okay, this is probably my best shot of, making it music.
So you, well, yeah, you didn't take a totally different route then. You went to Belmont for music.
Yeah,
Did you go?
I went to Belmont like
summer?
I majored in music business. So basically I got my bachelor's in business administration with an emphasis in the music business, which I'm glad that I have my BBA, and all that. I think it's really helped me with contracts and making sure that everything functions, but yeah, I mean, I went there with the intention, like, this is what I'm after. I want to be a signed artist that tours, that makes records. Like I was a little deflated at that moment, though. I was like, I don't care if I'm the singer, because at the time I was a singer of the other band. I was more like, I'll be the background guy just as long as I can be in music. So I kind of more portrayed myself as the guitar player,
Oh, okay.
I took the back seat in that season. I was like, no, I don't want to drag everybody around and then have them all ditch me at the end.
So the band that you were in that ended up getting signed your junior year, you didn't sing for the band? Or did you sing for the band? Oh, wow.
No, I didn't. It was kind of crazy. Like when I went to Nashville, I realized, yeah, there are a lot of studios and there's a lot of like industry, but it's either country or Christian at the time. And really, Christian was the most variable when it came to like the styles of music, because there was within Christian was pop, rock, alternative, all sorts of stuff. So the
heavy,
band,
I mean, they had like As Lay Dying and some of those big, heavier bands.
So I mean, that ended up being more the route that I went. I joined this Christian band and made a couple records with them. And just as a guitar player, we had a great singer at the time, and I was kind of content with just being the background guy.
What was that like getting signed? Did it? I don't know if we're the same age or close to that. I'm 38, so I remember growing up in San Diego, and a lot of these bands were getting in that like emo hardcore genre were getting signed. Like we had Pierce the Veil, but they were called Early Times back then, and like Undermined was a band, and then now Nick plays for Sleeping with Science. So like there's these bands that were getting signed, and it was like, oh my gosh, but their lives weren't changing. I mean, they were in a degree where now they were playing Warped Tour, or like Undermined was signed to Side One Dummy, and they got to play these bigger shows and open for these bigger acts. But they were like, when I was growing up thinking, because we had like Blink 182, and it was like, oh my gosh, like look at their millionaires, and like that's what everyone just associated with. Oh, you're a signed artist, you're set, right? You're set for life. Was that like getting signed, did that change much of what you're doing? Like, did you guys get put on the road like that? Or
yeah, I mean, I thought getting signed was, I looked at my then fiance and I was like, okay, so like when we sign, it's going to be crazy. We're going to make this record and then we're going to blast off into touring. Right. And it took years to get the record done and to have a single out that allowed the full record to come out, which allowed us to tour. Like it was just a many-year, probably 2 or 3 year process of like build up, including our senior year of college into a couple years out of college that were just grueling, like, crazy, random shows where we're playing at one point in this tiny room to a small group of people, to being in arenas opening up for other people, back to a tiny room. It was just this like awful roller coaster, and in some ways, because it was just like, we made it. Oh, we didn't make it. Oh, we made it. Oh no, we didn't, and we're not making any money. And I'm like, I'm gone a lot. And it was weird. I was also working like part-time valet, parking cars at the Symphony House here in Nashville. And then I was working part-time at like this auction house where we go into dead people's houses and find all their valuable stuff and take pictures of it. And I mean, it was crazy. There was a lot of moments where I was like, man, am I doing the right thing? Like, how am I signed and still doing all this crap,
Right.
My friends thought we were like, we made it, we were like, we had money and like whatever else, but we were far from that for sure.
Sure. Yeah. There's just like this like perspective that people, at least back then. I mean, I don't know
Yeah,
now, just because it's more exposed out in
yeah.
a way.
No,
Just
definitely
like
when we got signed, it was like, oh my gosh, you guys have money and your picture is down at Opry Mall, you know, on a billboard. Like you guys have to be like rich and famous now, you know.
yeah. That's still cool though, right? To see that you're like,
It
I'm on
was
the
really cool. I mean, you
bill.
know, it's like I go down the Opry and that would happen, and then I'd be, you know, valeting cars, and then my publisher pulls up to the Symphony House, and I open his door, and he's like, "What are you doing here?" And I'm like, "Bro, you don't pay me enough. I don't
Yeah,
know." I'm
exactly.
like,
What
"You
am I
tell
doing
me."
here?
Yeah, yeah. What am I doing? So there's a lot of funny moments like that that felt just like, you know, they're very humbling, but also just kind of hilarious looking back on it.
Oh wow. So does that band end up, breaking up, or like what was kind of the next move for you?
Yeah, so you know that I did 2 records with the band, and then I ended up leaving, and, you know, which was really hard. It always feels like kinda like a divorce or something, you know, to leave a
Sure.
band. But I just felt like I really truly felt I was like, "Man, a monkey could do my parts. Anybody could do my parts. This is not using, like, what I'm best at." And I just kind of realized, like, it just wasn't my best. So I, stupid enough, I ended up being like, well, hey, I didn't like being in a Christian band. Let's try writing for that genre. I'm like, what was I thinking? But you know, that was the most available thing to me next to what I'd done. And I'd known all these touring artists. So I ended up writing for a bunch of those artists. And that was cool. But it was again like kind of mediocre success. It was like I'd have a radio single happen. It's like, yes, but then it would go top 15, or I'd have a song get on an album get nominated for a Grammy, but it wasn't my song that actually got nominated for the Grammy. And like it was all this stuff that like they were like, you have goals and then there's like the edges of your goals. You know, I kept hitting all the edges of my goals and still broke as a joke, working crazy jobs like to try to make my music thing happen while I'm writing for these artists that are killing it, and realizing, okay, as just a writer, you don't really make enough money to live. And I'm like, you know, at least what I was in the genre I was doing it. And so it was kind of wild. That was even before streaming was really taking over. That was like still iTunes land. So there
Okay.
was some money to be had, but it wasn't record sales land still, you know? Um,
Yeah, it was kind of there's that weird in between period. Not that like streaming is paying, a whole
yeah.
lot, but like
But
yeah, it
yeah,
was like no one was buying albums. They were buying like one song on iTunes.
yeah, which was crazy. And you're like, oh, cool.
You're
But
like,
then
why don't you buy
I
the
ended
fifth
up
song that I'm on?
I ended up meeting Josh and Zach Farrow from the band Paramore right
Uh-huh.
as they were leaving the first time, leaving Paramore. And Zach is back in the band now as the drummer, but
Yeah.
we met right as I left my band, and we kind of started a little thing. I took the only $5,000 that I had in my bank account, which was a lot for me at the time.
Yeah.
And my wife had just, you know, gotten pregnant with our first kid. And we went into the studio and we recorded 10 songs. And I was singing a bunch of them, and Josh was singing a couple of them. And we got booking and management. And I'm like, this is it. This is the next step. Like it was alt rock. It was like, you know, local native, Seawolf, the National kind of vibe. I was
Mhm.
like, this is amazing. I was so stoked. And then it all kind of imploded. I feel like Josh and Zach weren't kind of seeing eye to eye with the vision of the band. And I think there was just still old wounds from Paramore. And so it just fell apart, you know? And I was just crushed. I'm like, oh my gosh, like I cannot make anything work. I feel like I'm like, you know, everything I'm trying is just, you know, I have this band, we try to get signed in high school, the guys leave and it falls apart. I
Mm.
start this band in college, we get signed, it just doesn't even make any money, even though we're signed, and it never quite reaches. I start writing Christian music. I have a few things happen, but it just doesn't support me, you know, and it wasn't just reaching any kind of my goals. I do this thing with Zach and Josh. I'm like, this is it. Oh my
Yeah.
gosh, we're going to blast off. Everybody's writing about it. Everybody's talking about it. The music is really good. I'm pumped. We got people on board, and then it all falls apart. And I'm just sitting there, you know, and I'm sitting there with my wife, and I'm like, well, what if I start another band? And she's like, no, like you need to make money. You gotta figure this out. So it was really this like fire in me from her and from myself of like, what am I gonna do? You know?
Mhm.
So I ended up randomly meeting this girl named Maggie Eckford and this producer, Matt Bromley. He had produced my old band. Well, Maggie, basically I was writing with this guy, Ian Keggy from the band Hot Shell Ray for his solo record. He had just left his band. And so he was dating this girl, Maggie, at the time. And she introduced me and she was like, hey, I really want to write with you. I want to write top 40 like you're writing with Ian. I think it'd be so cool. But I look her up and I see, oh my gosh, she gets crazy placements, like sync placements. I'm like, I've never done that before. I'm like, that seems pretty cool. And so I pull in Matt Bromley, who had produced my old band, the Christian band at one point, because he was kind of the best producer I knew, more seasoned. He had done all sorts of genres and all sorts of music. So I pull him in, and little did I know that that would be the moment that this crazy chemical reaction happened. We started this thing called Ruel. And it was like dark, cinematic, huge, dark, cinematic track with a small, fragile voice. And it was kind of some of the first times that had been done for that genre and that space and in that moment. And it just started destroying on sync. It was just like, we turned it in and it was just like show after show after show after show would use this song. And then we noticed the numbers online for her music going crazy. They were blowing out the roof. And every song we would do would place multiple times on TV, and fans were streaming it. It was just kind of this monster that was building up until about 2018, where she was like the most synced artist according to Billboard, above Imagine Dragons, above Snow Patrol, above Billie Eilish. And I was sitting in this passenger seat with Matt, kind of like going like, what is happening? I'm in the room on all these rights and during all the recordings and being a part of the recordings and part of the writing. And it was a really exciting experience. And I thought, she's not touring. She's really not interacting with the fans that much. It's just pictures and, a little bit of Instagram posts. And that led to me starting to do my own music again. But it was more like, well, I'll just put my voice on some big cinematic tracks like she's doing. And then that kind of morphed into trying a bunch of different things, because I was like one of the first dudes who was doing the big cinematic track with my vocal on it, and it started placing a bunch because it was just that time period. And that was kind of the beginning of like my artist stuff really taking off. And it was kind of based off the model that we had done with Ruel.
Interesting. So it started more as a placement thing, but you're like, okay, I can write songs and I'll put my voice in these things and see what happens. And then from there, it starts to happen in this TV sync world. And then are you like, wow, okay, like I should, write an album, or like, how does it go from there to becoming, now this is my artist project? And you probably wanted to pursue in a different way than just writing for specifically to try to get songs on TV or TV and film.
Yeah, it was weird because I was like, I had no intention of being an artist. I was just like, I can sing, and I realize now like how valuable the recording itself is. So if I'm the artist, that means that I have ownership in this recording, and it's more valuable than when I'm just a writer. I didn't really think anything of my own voice, to be honest. I was hopeful that maybe people would like my voice and that I could use my voice or whatever, but I really hadn't started singing again until later in life. I mean, I was like, late 20s before I really started digging into my voice again. And so I did a bunch of singles that came out as syncs were happening. And then I created this LP that I called Babel. And I basically was like, okay, 3 of these songs are going to be no dust sync songs. And in my mind, that was Legends Are Made, this song called Wolves, and then this other song called Play With Fire. But only 2 of those songs actually placed. Play With Fire ended up just being some wild viral pop thing.
Oh, it's massive. That's probably is that the biggest one you have? I mean,
yes, and it really didn't place up in like find any syncs or any playlisting or anything until the last couple of years, and it's been out for almost 5 to 7 years. I can't remember how long, but it's been a while. And and then the rest of the LP was just kind of songs I thought were cool. That might have a chance of placing, and that's kind of how I approached it. And then it really wasn't like I put it out and everything blew up. It was just a slow build over time. Every year things were doubling, and then they were doubling, and then they were doubling. And I'm like, what is going on? I know this sounds crazy, but until I had my like RIAA gold party for Play with Fire. And I'm sitting there with the plaque in my hand and I'm looking down and I'm like, there's my face. That's my name. That's my song. I'm like, I think it took that moment for me to go, okay, I'm an artist, you know, like, cause I
Yeah.
was like, but I think I was in denial all the way up to that point. I'm like, oh, I'm just a voice. I'm just a writer. I'm just a creative person. And then when I realized how much people were diving into my music, I was like, okay, I'm an artist, you know? So it was
Yeah.
from that moment on that I started making records more for the art of it, you know, and of course I still use some of the skills of being able to write music that sets well to picture, you know, but it was mostly just, especially this last record that I put out, I basically was like, what is the record I've always wanted to make? And basically it was like the late 90s, early 2000s thing. I had
Mhm.
heard Oliver Tree, his first record that he put out, and I was like, this guy is nuts. This
Oh
guy's
yeah.
crazy, you know? And I heard a song and I was like, well, I should try a song in this vein, but maybe everything else will be a little bit more middle rather than being crazy left where he has like balls on his chin and weird, you know, stuff like
Right.
that where
Yeah.
you're just
He's
like,
like over the
what in
top.
the world are you doing? You know,
Yeah.
but I loved like when I looked at the numbers and people were loving it, I was going, is this coming back? I'm like, nobody else is doing stuff like this. And I don't think this is coming back, but if there's any chance of this coming back in the next few years, I'm like, I want to be on the train. So I started making the record and it just honestly, it was like perfect timing, like divine timing, because as I'm making this record over the next 2 years, I'm seeing Machine Gun Kelly pop off. I'm seeing
Mhm.
Travis Barker become one of the biggest producers in the world, according to Billboard. And then Weezer has their first #1 album, you know, that they've ever had, or something like that crazy in this last few
Yeah.
years. And it was just all the stars aligned to make this record that I thought was just going to be an art piece and like maybe nobody would like it, into like, okay, this is a viable thing. Maybe people might like this, you know?
It's so strange how how I mean, obviously your new album, you have so many like stars on it from that genre that came through, that it's so crazy to watch that kind of come back around, you know, like emo night happening, and then like
Yeah,
these band like Machine Gun Kelly and these bands kind of popping off in that realm, and then it's like
yeah.
When We Were Young festival sells out in 10 minutes, and it's like
So
it's so
crazy.
crazy to see. Like I remember seeing all these bands that are on this lineup like to 100 people and no one cared, and then now it's like this nostalgia thing, like oh my god, you know, it's just
Dude.
so cool it's really cool to see.
Yeah,
It
I
really
think people
is.
were tired of like shiny pop. They wanted something with edge and that had emotion, and maybe that matched the angst that they were feeling from all the craziness of 2020 and the lockdowns and all that stuff. I think they were just like, I don't want any of this shiny stuff. Like this doesn't match real life, you know? And so
Mhm.
I think them, and then the feeling of nostalgia, like you're talking about. I mean, they're thinking the music brings them back to so simpler times, you know? So
Yeah.
it's like I kind of like I get it, and I'm pumped that it's here, and I really hope that rock behaves and we can put out amazing music so it can stay, you know, that people don't start putting out trash and then everybody's like, oh, rock sucks, and then I have to go back into hiding and you know.
Go back into hiding. I think a lot of it too is like the lyrics that came out of those early late 90s to early 2000 emo bands, like
Yeah,
what Saves the Day was doing and Taking Back Sunday, and some of those bands, you'd see like their AOL instant messenger, people would use like their lyrics as like their, you know, like their away message or whatever.
oh
And there's
yeah,
something like so deep about it, but it was being, you know, 19 and like, oh, my heart got broken. And it was so
yeah,
relatable in a way that I feel like that's kind of coming back around again. Like it's now
definitely.
in the forefront. And I think it always came down to like there was rad melodies and there was great lyrics, and people, the younger generation, hopefully, I mean, I can see them latching onto that again. I mean, like people like Dashboard Confessional,
Yeah,
when he came out with, you know, Hands Down, even prior to that, when he put it out on that EP, that acoustic EP, it was like, oh my gosh, like this is crazy. And, you know, but the lyrics were awesome and the melody was there.
yeah. I mean, you know, it's funny because like people who are a little bit younger than me will argue with me about Chris being the father, the godfather of emo. They'll kind of like push a couple other things, but for me, Chris is kind of that guy. He's the one who introduced me to that genre. And when I think of that sound, people are mimicking and you know, kind of copying, and with the highest form of flattery, his style, like that he kind of developed, you know, like it was his, like the lyrics even, and like the tear your heart open and put it on the table type, like over the top, like emotional lyric. Like, I feel like he's just the king of that. And every time I write with him, I'm always impressed by the chunk of lyric that comes out, and you're just like, well, that's a piece of art. What the hell? Like, where did you come up with that? You know? And I think that's like his superpower, is just being able to like tap into something where everyone will sing every single word to every song. Like, he doesn't have singles. He has albums of songs that people sing every word to. Like, when I go and see the shows, I'm just always so blown away. And I remember I just asking him, like, how do you do that? How does that work? You know? And he's like, well, you know, I've been doing it for a long time in bands and all that. But I'm like, dude, you have some sort of like magic power or something. I don't know. I don't understand, you know?
Yeah, no, it's so interesting that you say, because he was, right? I mean, the bands that were considered emo before that wave of artists, you know, people, you know, Sunny Day Real Estate or Get Up Kids, these are the emo bands. Well, yeah, but what everyone did after Chris came out and put out songs like off of Places to Come to Fear the Most, like that was like the next level. Like, oh, this guy's singing like in this really high, like pretty voice,
so
into
high.
acoustic guitars, and but the lyrics are so deep, and it's such that just changed. It changed a lot for people.
I hear that record, and it reminds me of like some of the like funniest and sweetest times of being a kid and trying to navigate love. And you know, I just remember like hearing those songs and being like, yeah, she did cheat on me and I hate it. You know? It's like, Chris gets it. He gets it, man. This girl is just doing horrible things, and man, I just wanted to love her. You know, it's like all those songs are basically like that. It's like, this girl's breaking my heart, and all I want to do is just love her to the maximum extreme. And like, I think I think the cool thing about him too is like, and I tell him this, like whenever I talk about it, I'm like, dude, you have no idea how lucky you are and how fortunate you are that you have been able to create just the music that you want to, that comes out of you. There was no like business thing in mind. There was no anything in mind about making money. You just emoted, and that's what people connected with, and that was what was most successful. Like his story, and Nick from All American Rejects, when he tells me about how they got signed and everything, I'm just like, I use the word, I'm like, God, that's so romantic. Like it just, it is. Their stories are romantic to me, because I'm like, that is what you always dream of happening to you, you know, when you're a musician and you're making songs and you're in your bedroom writing stuff and hoping that something's going to happen with them one day. Like my story is a little bit weirder, and like kind of all these little stair stepping, and, you know, like kind of like, oh, it's not going to happen. Oh, it is going to happen. Oh, it's not going to happen. But like their story is just this crazy, like, you know, even Nick, he was telling me that they would record songs after high school or whatever. They would, you know, Tyson would come over after his classes and record some songs. They recorded 6 songs. They sent it in a press kit with some pictures. And then I guess the record label found it and they signed them. And then they had to make another 4 songs. And that was the first record. And I'm just like, what?
Yeah, that was like the formula that everyone was trying to do. And not many bands were able to accomplish it. Right. I mean, that was the thing. Like, here's my press kit. I remember I interviewed Pierre of Simple Plan, and they did the same thing. Like they drove to New York with like their press pack and their CD, and it was like giving it to the label, like, come on. You know, like it's like those days are so done now. It's just like, here's an email. Or well, now it's like labels that just look on TikTok and be like, oh, this guy's got 6 million views on this video. But yeah, it's cool that romantic is like such a great word to describe that time and seeing those bands.
So how did you Milli Vanilli? Look at that Milli Vanilli singing that song on TikTok.
Yeah, right, exactly.
We all do it. It's fine, whatever.
Yeah, because when I hadn't, dude, I full transparency, I didn't know who you were until I started to see some emails about you. And I'm like, damn, like, did I just totally miss the boat on this guy? Like he's got all these, you know, he's got Chris Carrabba on his record, and he's got Nick Wheeler, and he's got all these people that, and you have millions of, I'm like looking at your Spotify numbers, and I was just like, like a few months ago, I'm like, damn, like who is this guy? Like, how did you like build relationships and get, I just feel like you obviously didn't come out of nowhere. Like, it's great to
Yeah, I
hear
mean,
your story, like in that, and I don't mean come out of nowhere in the sense that like, I feel like it's just like I go on the computer, I'm like, this guy's worked with everybody. Like,
yeah,
how the, where the fuck
it's
have
crazy
I
because
been?
like it's crazy because like the I had a funny small story that will lead to the answer to this. As I had got a phone call from my manager, and she was like, hey, she's like, so I used to intern at Maroon 5's management, and this guy Ash Harrison, like he's their manager, and he manages Big Boy and Fitz, and like he wants you to come in and meet with him when you come to LA. And I was like, what? I'm like, why? He's like, well, his son loves your song Legends Are Made, and like had heard it on this thing called Dude Perfect, and like he wants to meet you and hear about your story and like just kind of talk with you. And I was like, what in the world? So I ended up going in with them. And one of the things that we talked about, he was just, and I didn't know if to take it as like a compliment or not. I took it as a compliment because I'm more of a positive person, but he was just like, man, he's like, I just love your attitude about, how these songs are so big, but like people don't really know who you are, And he's like, I just love that you have a good attitude about it. And I was like, honestly, I'm like, I had no choice. It was like these songs find their way. And in some ways it gives me like anonymity. Like, I can go out and go to places and do whatever and not get bugged. But there is a part of me, like with this record, I was like, how do I connect the human that is me and the songs? I want people to fall in love with me as the person along with the music, because I'm attached to these things. And I will say during that time with like the other records, there was a lot of disassociation with my music. I was just like, I was going through anxiety stuff, panic stuff, and really hard life stuff. And I think that I just kind of pushed this persona out so that people couldn't see what was happening in. And I think a lot of that, like not putting a lot of pictures of myself, and I didn't play any shows whatsoever. Like my first headlining tour was like this past year, which is
Oh,
crazy.
wow.
So like I was very much an internet boy, but like mostly ultra mysterious and ultra like epic songs. So the press stuff and everything was just kind of real pushed back on like who I was, And so I think not allowing people in left people loving my songs and maybe using them virally on TikTok or finding them on TV, or, people loving the art, but not necessarily having any idea who I was, And I think some of that was by accident, but some of that is just like, I think how it happened with everything that was going on, like, on a personal level, I think. And like I said, my denial of like, I'm not an artist. I'm a writer, I'm a vocalist, I'm a creative, but I'm not an artist, So I
But
think I only really tried to put myself out there in the last couple of years.
okay, yeah, and I wasn't trying to be like offensive
No,
of
no,
like the fact that, because I really was like, whoa,
it's crazy. It's really weird. Even to me, it's mind blowing. I'm like, no radio, no sync. And this like, and Play with Fire is like really close to going platinum now. And I'm
it's
like,
huge.
how does that even happen? How does that happen? I don't understand. And my goal now is to try to connect the dots of like people knowing my song and knowing my name. Like, and that is the age old artist thing, like the battle of like, you go and you play a festival and people are like, I know that song. And you're like, it's me.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. I've been here.
I think I've kind of like, I really branded myself for a long time as like the guitar guy, the sync guy, or the writer guy. So I met Chris during a time when I was managed by this management company he was on, and they introduced us and we played each other music, and it was more like we should write together kind of thing, less of like I'm an artist and whatever. And so I had known him from that, and then when I saw him again, I was shooting like a live music video thing for Can't Take Me Anywhere, which is more of like kind of more of a punk pop thing. And I walked into this building to get a drink of water. And it's a skate park. I see Chris, and I was like, Chris. And he looked at me. I usually would wear a hat or whatever, and he looked at me and was like, Sam? And I'm like, yeah. I'm like, dude, what's going on? And we reconnected. I sent him the music, and he was like, you have to let me write on this with you. And I was like, yes, I do. I'm like,
Yes.
just do whenever you want. Like, when are you in town? When are you not busy? Let's make it happen. So it kept happening like that, where these people that like are so influential to me growing up and as an artist would hear the thing I was doing for my next record and were getting as excited as I was. And I was like, maybe I have something, maybe this is the next vibe that I should be chasing. And, Nick was no different. Like the fact that he was just like, yeah, I'll add some guitars and like, sure, I'll be a feature on it with you. And, I was just like, and I'll be in all the like the press stuff and the TikToks and the whatever. And I mean, I've gotten to know him really well now. And I'm like, man, we should have, like, he's somebody who I'm like, I feel like I've known you forever, but we've only known each other for a year or so. It's just like, I'm finding these kindred spirits in this whole genre of rock that like, we all share the same references and the same like albums that we love and the same language. So like when we write or when we hang or whatever, it's just, we get each other a little bit easier,
Yeah, when I heard the new album, I was like instantly a fan. I'm like, who is like this is insane. Like I was like, yeah, I haven't heard an artist or a band in a while that really drew me back to being, early college or late high school and seeing those bands that we've been talking about this whole time play to no one and just being like, oh my God, like this is such a thing. And like I honestly I was so shocked when I heard the whole album. I was like, I've been asleep. Where is this guy? Like, how have I not seen this dude? And he's like got Dashboard in this video. I'm like, what the,
I tried to pull all the stops out for this one, to be honest. I was like, okay, I'm going all in. This is an all-in artist record. I'm going to do as many videos as I can possibly afford. I'm going to try to get all of my cool friends to be a part of this. And that was basically it. I mean, I tried to, there's a couple, they will not be named. There was a couple other artists that at the time weren't really that big of a deal. But I asked them to be part and they were like, well, I have too many features this year. And like, but I'm just relentless. I just don't take no for an answer as far as like, okay, maybe they aren't part of it, but maybe they aren't supposed to be. And so like when the Chris thing happened really easily and the Nick thing happened really easily, and I was able to get my friend Bryce to be a part of stuff, I was just like, you know what, the people who are meant to be on this record will be. And it was cool too. Like, I mean, it was mostly nerding out, but I had Tom Lord Alge, who did a lot of like the mixing for the early Blink-182 records. He did a lot of the Weezer records. I had him mix a song for the album to like see what that would be like. I had him mix Antisocial, and it was so funny. He's like this funny dude. He's sitting there vaping with his little vape pen. He's like filming himself. He's like, hey, watch this. And he points down to the little fader. He's like, you're like, yes, bro. Like, you're like, get it. Yes, Tom. But it's just been such a cool experience to like bring some of these people in that like I've listened to the art that they've created for a really long time, and for them to be a part of my art. I mean, I'm a music fan first and foremost, like I love music. It's helped me through some of the hardest times of my life and made me feel less of an outsider, and so, I mean, that's really what I hope this record does for people too, is just makes them feel less alone and less like a loser, and just kind of gives them hope that like, all right, if this guy who's an absolute loser can find his way to turn that into art and something that's, cool and flips it on its head, then, maybe I can do that later too,
Yeah, no, man. I think the album is so good. And then obviously then I went back and listened to a lot of your other stuff. I didn't know your songs in that same like typical like way of like.
No, I mean, it's TikTok is kind of it's funny because I haven't been a user on TikTok.
I'm not a user either. I just know because I have a 15-year-old that's his life.
but I had to be for this record because they're basically like, listen, you have these songs popping off on TikTok, which is great by themselves or whatever. But if you're not a user on TikTok, like they won't help you get the new record out. Like they just won't if you're not a user. And I was like, crap. I'm like, well, I don't want that to happen, So I had to get my old ass on there and figure it out,
Yeah, because you did like I think the one like the Apex Legends thing was the one that I was like, oh, okay, because like that was a huge game,
Oh,
right?
sick.
Yeah.
Yes.
So that was the thing where I was like, oh, okay, I know this. I knew this song. And then it's funny because we just watched my 7-year-old wanted to watch the Chang Can't Dunk. What's the Disney
Oh
one
yeah,
we just
yeah,
did?
yeah. Chang can dunk. Yeah,
Yeah, because
Disney
I'm like,
movie.
what the hell is this? And they're watching the trailer, and I'm like, I know this song. Like, what?
Yeah,
Yeah, and then we ended up watching the movie, which was, yeah, it was all right.
yeah. I always feel like the trailers for movies are always better than the actual movies. A lot of times, like my family, they're like, "Were you bummed that it wasn't in the actual movie?" I'm like, "Listen, so many more people are going to see the trailer than they're
The
going to see the
trailer is it,
movie."
man. I know that's the. I would rather, if I were you, I'd rather have the trailer, right? Like
Yeah,
the
100%.
sizzle of what it is. Like,
I
it's
had no idea that like any of this music would be used at all for sync. I hope that maybe since I had done so much work in that space that people would know my name to be like, well, let's play it. Maybe let's just, we'll see, press play and be like, okay, we can figure out something for this, maybe coming of age or
yeah.
whatever, but like when that happened on the trailer, I was like, I was so stoked. I was jumping up and down. I'm like, finally a song that I like fully relate with, fully love as an artist, and it's doing this thing, that has really helped get my music out there. So yeah, I mean, that was a perfect use too. It was such a funny, like,
Oh
like
man, huge like Disney Plus thing like that. Yeah.
it's pretty
And
cool.
yeah, man, I was like, whoa, just so cool, man. So cool. And I love that you're doing like, and again, like I felt like I was asleep because I'm like, oh, he's doing emo night. Like who the like where's this guy? Like I feel like you just came out of you're like, hey, I'm here now. Like
Well, I mean, if I'm totally transparent, like when I was doing more of the TV film stuff, it's when I realized a lot that I had a rock vocal, and like a rock vocal for a long period of time just wasn't cool. You know what I mean? Like
Mhm.
it wasn't something that like everybody was liking. And so I didn't really know what to do. I was just like, okay, well, I know that a rock vocal like an Imagine Dragons or like an X Ambassadors or whatever can work in this sync space. So I'm like, well, I kind of felt like limited, like, oh, well, I guess I'll just use my rock vocal in this kind of TV filmy thing, and that'll
Mhm.
be what it is. And then I kind of like I tried different flavors, but when I was able to like fully do this record, and I was like, we're going like, full on Weezer vibes, we're going full on like Blink 182 and all sorts of stuff. I was like, okay, like I can pull out what feels even more natural for me, and so
Mhm.
I think I was just excited, like I don't have to hide anymore, I sing rock music, like I feel like
Right.
everybody's been like, don't say the R word, the kids might get scared, and I'm like
Right.
I'm in a session and I'm going to pick up the guitar, and they're like, shh, shh, shh.
They're like, let's shut the door.
Yeah, they're like, no, this track doesn't need any guitar. Like now I'm like actually picking up guitar and playing on things, and people are like, "Do you play guitar?" And I'm like, "Yeah, you haven't let me do it in the last 10 years, but yes, I play guitar." Like so it's honestly been kind of like, how trends come and go, and I'm really glad that this one is here. And like I said, I want to be part of the wave of like good music that hopefully can keep it for as long as possible.
Mhm. And yeah, dude, I love your album. It's hard. It doesn't make sense me saying that you're killing it, but because you've been killing it for so long, and I just was totally unaware. So sorry about that.
Dude, no, man. I mean, there's so much music. It is like it's an ocean of amazing artists and people showing me stuff. And I click on it and I'm like, I have no idea who this is. And they have 10 million monthly listeners. I'm like, how is this even possible? But that's the new world that we live in. It's like music is no longer chronologically released. It is, but it isn't, because it's like a song can come out and then 5 years later, like Play with Fire blows up. And you're like, well, that I wish it would have done it earlier, but man, I'm thankful for anything. And
Yeah.
so like I think that's kind of like the new trajectory for artists, is like people finding things. I mean, I guess it's kind of like a Jeff Buckley situation, where it's like he was incredible when he was alive, but we all kind of discovered him, most of us, well after he was dead, and
Yeah.
now revel in the art that he made. But I'm sure he probably would have preferred us to be there at some of his shows, but
Right. That's a
but
great point.
but it's cool that people are like really enjoying his art. So it's like, I realize like in music, it's a forever battle for us. Like And I think that I have to just, we all have to just kind of keep our minds on the goal, which is just making the best art possible. And people are going to hear it when they hear it, and like you, it's like, I'm so glad that you've heard the music now. And now, it's like, now I have an advocate and someone who can help me tell people about it,
Oh, dude, I'm gonna tell everybody, and I have been. I'm like, have you seen this guy? I didn't know who he was, and it's just, yeah. Dude, I love what you're doing. And then you recently did a tour, so I was like, oh, I missed the boat on that. But you are playing emo night, which is cool.
Yeah.
My friend Maddie, actually, my neighbor, he did the most recent one.
Oh, cool.
Maddie Mullins. Yeah,
Yeah.
He said it was pretty. He said he was like so stoked on it. He just did one, I think, in Corpus Christi or something. But
Dude,
they're doing it again.
He's like my long lost brother. I really.
Well, you guys are like, well, you look so similar.
I think that our moms aren't telling the truth or something. Like somebody's not telling the truth somewhere. But dude, he's an amazing vocalist. Like he's killer. Like I definitely like doing these emo nights. I'm gonna be looking over and be like, oh my gosh, that's dude from Lit. Oh my God, that's
yeah.
Like
I know.
I'm gonna be freaking out for sure. But I'm just, it's gonna be so fun. I will say too, I have some like pretty crazy like collaborations coming out after this album that I'm really excited about too, that I think are gonna lead to some cool tours. So we'll see.
Yeah, I was gonna say, I don't know if you probably want to hold off on who they are unless you want to. I would love to know. But but I'm excited. So after that show, you have more music coming out?
Yeah, just little singles. Like I think this year, the album was such a big task. So I don't foresee myself doing an album anytime soon, but I definitely, we'll be doing some really cool collaborations with some people. And we'll probably release a deluxe album because I have another song that I couldn't quite finish in time. And then a couple remixes, like including like an acoustic version of Bittersweet and a remix of Loser that I'm really stoked about. So we'll do a deluxe album for sure, but there are some collaborations after that with some artists that I really love in kind of like the rock space, even hip hop space that I'm like really stoked about. So, I really like, my thing is like, I love all genres of music. So I'm always trying to figure out how I can fit in with different places and just kind of bring it all together. So yeah, it's gonna be fun. It's gonna be really cool.
I'm excited, man, and I really appreciate your time. Thank you so much for hanging out with me this morning, man. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, dude, thanks for having me. This is awesome.
I have one more quick question for you.
Yeah.
Before I let you go, I want to know if you have any advice for aspiring artists.
Yeah, I mean, I guess my advice for a new artist would be, don't have a plan B. If you have a plan B, there are so many moments in life where you'll take it. And I think this is such a hard pursuit, to want to do music for a living, to want to be somebody that creates art that connects with the world. And it takes a lot of sacrifice, a lot of years of no's, and a lot of failure. But if you can take that and you can see yourself doing nothing else, then keep pushing, keep making music, write every day, write with people that are to the left and the right of you, that inspire you, that you think are talented, bring them in, and just don't give up. That sounds so cliche, but that really is it. I think if I would have given up in the last like 4 or 5 instances of my failure, I would have never been doing what I'm doing now, which is such a fulfilling time, like really exciting moment of music for me and a lot of my dreams coming true. So it's just about being relentless and not having a plan B, because the plan B ends up being probably what you'll end up doing. So if you can see yourself doing anything else, do that. That's always my advice for people. I'm like, but if you can't, if it keeps you up at night, thinking about what you should be doing and how people should be hearing your voice and hearing your songs, if you can't sleep at night and you wake up the next morning still thinking about it, and you're at your day job daydreaming about it, it's probably for you, and you should just really just go after it,